If your parents have told you this is so, if your whole society tells you this is so, then, you know, you believe this is so. But look at Malala.
Welcome to the Global Indian Podcast, the world's greatest journey and the official platform for people of Indian origin. Because let's face it, we are everywhere. My name is Rajan Nazran, and on our weekly show, we plunge into the human experience of being a person of Indian origin, take a closer look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the issues you need to know more about. This is the world's greatest journey that will ultimately change the way you see the notion of Indianness to be, and importantly, our connection to each other. Every week, the team and I are joined by a guest where we have open conversations about the 50 shades of brown that is our experience and take a closer look at the issues close to their hearts. In this conversation, we travel all the way down to Portugal to meet with a truly remarkable human being. She has been a dear friend to the series, and many of you would have seen her article that's been viewed now in excess of over 16 million times online. That's with the Global Indian series feature on Portugal. Now, Chitra's story is truly magnificent. One, because it looks at entrepreneurship and her remarkable journey from Singapore, her upbringing from there, through to where she is now in Portugal, and how she set up her businesses that have made a huge impact on the country, and has also seen her becoming an advisor to the Prime Minister. But there's another part of this conversation that delves into Chitra's version of her religion and how she sees female empowerment to go hand in hand with that. It's truly both a very relevant conversation, especially what's taking place globally, but also an incredibly inspiring one, because it really does plunge into the human experience of not just being a person of Indian origin, but also being a female within the community, and saying what are the boundaries that are in place and what do we need to do together to remove those, so therefore everybody equally gets to enjoy this fragile form of being a human being. It really is a fantastic conversation with a dear friend of ours at the show itself. As always, if you'd like to find out more about the podcast, listen to the end of the session, and there you can actually hear pointers on how to interact with us and how to get more. This podcast has been supported by our dear friends at shareme.com, the app for all your beauty, wellness and fitness needs. It's also been equally supported by our dear friends at Martinor Hotels, the resort that is family friendly, child friendly, and for me one of the most magnificent places to visit and to stay at in Portugal. I hope you enjoy this session.
Get up and just move. 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 Get up and just.
So kicking off, one thing I'm really excited about is that with yourself, Chitra, you are almost the United Nations of global Indianness, because you've been from Singapore to another country, then London, Switzerland, then obviously to Portugal, and a whole range of countries in between. And unlike most guests, I've had the chance to also meet with your entire family, including your father when I was in Malaysia.
Great, yeah. Thank you.
It's kind of nice seeing all these variables that have impacted you. But the first question is, what's it like being you?
Yeah, a mixture of cultures. I mean, it feels completely normal, but you know, I guess when you have to think about what foods you love, or you know, what movies you like, you know, what books do you love reading, that's when you start realizing, you know, that you are a mixed bag, you know, a mixture of things. In Singapore, we call it rojak, which means it's a, you know, mixed. It's a very famous dish with very sweet, spicy sauce, and you know, with vegetables, and it's a mixture, you know, tossed salad. Yeah, look, it feels good. I love Chinese food. You know, if you ask me what my favorite food is, it's Chinese food. You know, there's some favorite movies in there that are, you know, Indian in origin. You know, so I love pan, so it's crazy sometimes when I have to really think about it. But it's good, United Nations, you hit the nail on the head. That's what I love to be, because I truly believe in, uh, you know, uh, all these colors bleeding into one, as Bono said in one of his songs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what was it like for you growing up? Because you grew up in Singapore, is that correct?
Yes, so I grew up in Singapore, born and brought up in Singapore. Um, it was amazing to grow up there. I didn't realize at the time, but um, since independence, I was born 5 years from independence, more or less, and yet I was lucky enough to have all the inoculations, vaccines, for free, great healthcare, great education as well for free. So, I come from that generation of Singaporean that truly benefited from, Lee Kuan Yew's great strategic plan for the country. Um, I also love the fact that I grew up um, in a mixture of languages and cultures. My own family comes from South India, but we grew up with Chinese kids, Malay kids. Indians actually a minority, and it was fantastic. I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to learn Mandarin as my second language growing up. So, that is not to be sneezed at today. But it was only possible with the great education system that Singapore had, where a second language was drilled into you every day of the week,
Yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic food as well. I mean, you can't not you can't talk about Singapore without talking about the great mixture of food that we have and the hawker centers, and the availability of cheap, high quality food. The variety is just incredible. Yeah, these are sort of the things that come to mind. And I think growing up in Singapore really helped me to be a strategic thinker. It was drilled into us. So lots to be thankful for. I only left when I was 19, so nearly 2 decades of Singapore for my birth. Was great.
What does that whole notion of Indianness mean to you? Because you've lived this extraordinary life. Just for the audience out there, you moved over to Portugal only what, just over a decade ago. You
Yeah.
took on some of the biggest risks you can ever imagine, and now you have a chain of hotels. You're in education, movies, evidently as well. So it's like the whole portfolio is growing. But before you got to that stage, you took a very different route into business, but that was really shaped by this inner understanding of this notion of Indianness or responsibility.
Yeah.
What is it?
So yeah, my husband and I have been in Portugal for nearly 2 decades. Time flies when you're having fun. So
Wow.
19 years. But Indianness and doing business. I mean, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My father, my grandfather came to Singapore as an immigrant businessman. And my father arrived when he was 15 years old and took over the shop that my grandfather had. I mean, they had very hard beginnings. My father arrived on a rat-infested boat, a ship, as an immigrant, and lived in a shop house, as they were called, which would be equal to a dormitory with 20, shared with 20 other guys, which had like one bathroom in it. But hard beginnings, and he grew his business, which was trading in spice, importing Indian goods to Singapore, into a much bigger thing. And he was very flexible. When he saw business opportunities, he jumped on them. You've met my father. He's in Kuala Lumpur now. He launched 6 years ago his Uncle Saba's Papadum. So what did I learn? I mean, I guess, and my mother was always by his side. She focused on the children, but was there to jump in to help in the business whenever, she was needed. And she ended up, in the later years, working much more in the business than when I was born, for example. So what did I learn? I learned what it was like to think day and night about your business. I mean, there are a lot of Indians who are entrepreneurs, and I guess I strongly associated this hard work ethic that my parents showed me, throughout my life, as being part of, having your own business. And certainly, when it came to working hard at school, I can tell you, I mean, nothing was good enough for them. I mean, I was in a predominantly Chinese school in my secondary school years, and my father, I still remember the discussions. I'd be third in the whole year, and he'd say, "So who was number one and two, and what was the gap?" So it was all. I guess what was that? It was, you can either treat that as a problem and be psychologically impaired, or you treat it as, yes, that's what life is about. You got to keep trying hard. It's about continuous improvement, and it's about being the best you can be and reaching your true potential. So that was definitely part of our upbringing. There was religion as well. I mean, we come from a Hindu family, and we had a prayer altar at home, as many Hindus do. And in Singapore, we were lucky enough to go to temple very often, and South Indian style temple, actually, with the fantastic gopurams. And we learned a lot about Hinduism as well, the philosophy. I did religious knowledge in school, and because Singapore is a multicultural society, we were offered to study Hindu studies as well. And so I learned a lot about the philosophy of Hinduism, and also the openness and tolerance that part of our religion, which is why I guess I had no problems marrying a Catholic, Roman Catholic in the end. And we really learned this mutual tolerance and respect for each other, going to mosques or going to churches, Buddhist temples. We had the whole array all around us on the small island. And we realized that it was only through mutual respect, cooperation, that we could become a success. I guess it was kind of a microcosm of the United Nations in some strange way, Rajan, so that was being Indian and growing up in Singapore, coming together right there. But I mean, there's, my father made it a point to really take us every year to Madras, Chennai, to be with the relatives, our uncles and aunts and cousins. A huge part of my family actually moved to the United States in the 70s. We also kept in touch with them. I have over 40 first cousins dotted all around the world because both my parents come from large families. But that was the other thing, I also grew up, the Indianness was learning that, the extended family is really important. And my father would extend a helping hand to so many parts of the family, who are less fortunate, or, who needed opportunities, who needed a leg up. And, I learned that from him and my mother too, staying connected with the rest of the family, and being generous, with those who are less fortunate than us, and helping out wherever we could. And, the other Indian thing I would say is the networking. We used to have parties at home all the time, sort of education was important, but so was showing your face and saying hello to all the aunties and uncles who turned up at home. But, what did I learn there? I mean, he really taught me the importance of networking, and my mother taught me the importance of, congeniality and kindness. I mean, she has so much charisma that she can charm people with her smile. And again, that is a great Indian trait: hospitality, being hospitable at home, and inviting guests. And I could go on. I mean, how much time do you have?
Well, I was going to say, has it changed? Because having met your father, he's very liberal. And I know we've had many occasions looking at women in society. Is it an Indian thing? Is it a national thing? Is it a cultural thing? What is it? But do you feel that notion of togetherness, of open society, has almost changed in modern day spectrum of what Indianness has translated into?
Yeah, look, I mean, for us, it was that, definitely. And what I understood about Hinduism when I studied it, was also that, open, tolerant, liberal. And that's what I love about being in Portugal. It is a very open, tolerant, liberal society here. Um, as with any country, the larger it gets, the more complex it is, and throw in the amount of poverty that exists in India, um, and, different levels of education. It's a very complex country, right? So I feel sort of privileged to have had, our view from Singapore. We used to visit India often, and we were liberal in outlook. And I know, the part of India my family comes from. My father comes from near Tanjore, and my mother from Madras itself. And you know, I would say we felt the same there. It was very liberal, and there are many Muslims, for example, in the village that my dad comes from. It's a big part of society. Christians and Muslims form a huge part of Madras in general. So that was one thing, and I think yes, I mean, of course, we became more liberal as we went from India to Singapore, and then Singapore to West. If you're talking about, not just religious sort of viewpoints, Western viewpoints, but my dad had a very liberal view on education, considering he comes from a small village in South India, and he had 4 daughters and 2 sons. He has 4 daughters and 2 sons. The daughters first, and yet he made his dream of becoming Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi. He created role models in our heads, that we could do and be anything that we wanted to, as opposed to, in his village, as soon as a girl hit adolescence, she would stop going to school in those days, right? So I really feel privileged that I had, my mom, comes from a large family too, and she has an undergraduate degree in zoology too. So, I mean, on both sides of the family, education was important. My father's, one brother and one sister, equal opportunities. They're both doctors. Those who wanted to get out there and work hard and get the education, they would. So I think for education as well, he had a very liberal approach. I mean, I did electronic engineering, and there was no discussion. He would have loved for me to do medicine, as many but there was no stereotyping, that girls are better off doing languages or whatever.
Then because we're skirting around one subject there, but we're heading to the other one. What's your biggest frustration? Because when we look at the role of women in culture, one thing that you've been a very strong advocate of is female empowerment, and especially entrepreneurship. What's your biggest frustration with the idea of the global Indian women's side? Are we doing enough as a community to empower the women in societies, in your opinion? And what more needs to be done?
Huge topic. Look, I mean, Indian women, obviously the global, when you talk about women outside India, in many ways, we are in a sense more privileged, but I would also say India, you saw Indira Gandhi becoming prime minister early on. So there are the role models in India itself. You and I first met through Nandini Singla, who is the ambassador of India here in Portugal, extremely dynamic lady. Yeah. So, and there are several other female leaders that Indians can look up to. Indra Nooyi, ex-CEO of PepsiCo. So what is lacking? Should we be doing more? I mean, I know that the Global Indian, we try to put role models out there. That's what I'm trying to do, is to speak about my experiences and to show women that it's possible. And to seek out the right partners in your business. Not take suppression as a norm, but go beyond it. And it doesn't have to be sort of a violent oppression. Exactly. That's also being Indian, right? I mean, Gandhiji taught us ahimsa, and I saw that also from my mother. She's very good at opposing things she doesn't agree with. It doesn't have to necessarily be aggressive. But we do have problems. I mean, we have problems in India, I think, in certain areas. I mean, it's not just in India, it's in several different countries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of education equality, equal opportunities for women. But there's a huge contrast because you've got the women in leading positions in science, technology, government, but you've also got those who are still oppressed, and there's domestic violence, and there's lots of other problems. What can we do? Increase education, decrease the inequality gap. Get.
But is it more than that, though, Chitra? We had a chutney musician. She's very famous across the Caribbean, and she came through this horrific circumstances, domestic violence, so on and so forth, until she found her voice. And they're very well educated. The partner had a degree, she had a. What part in the culture have we taken that we think the role of women should be here, when reality is, when you have a look back in Hinduism, or if you have a look in Sikhism, Islam, whichever religion it is, everything's been very equal.
Oh yeah, and more. I mean, I think I brought this example up to you when we spoke, last time. Our religion is full of examples of extremely powerful female goddesses who were created even, to vanquish demons that the male gods could not vanquish. Durga was a creation from several, forces, and Shakti, Ardhanarishwar, who's half Shiva, half Shakti. So look, it's confusing. Yes, you're right. Why is it that some men are allowed to, beat up their wives in domestic violence, or just be allowed to keep them lower because they're insecure about the wife or partner potentially rising above them? Not easy, but I think that exists in many countries and religions. It's global.
Absolutely.
The fact that males can feel superior to females, and you didn't have these movements for nothing. The suffragette and the women's lib movements, and we. I apologize for the pinging.
Don't worry.
Yeah. So what can we do is to keep rising. I mean, it's awful when we hear of these stories of women who had to really fight to get out of a domestic violence situation, but that comes from crazy egos, and insecurities. I'm very lucky to have met a husband. My husband is extremely secure in himself, and has no problems putting me up on a pedestal, which I appreciate very much. Because he believes in equality, and that we should do things together. Each of us has our skills, and we have complementary skills and complementary characters. So what can we do more is to expose these stories of women who got through those situations, because that, I think, gives strength for other women who might be in those situations to get through it as well. That's all I can say for now. What gives men the authority to do that? I guess it's ganging up, right? I mean, I hate to use that word, but you grow up with it, you believe it. If your parents have told you this is so, if your whole society tells you this is so, then you believe this is so. But look at Malala Yousafzai as well. I mean, who took on the Taliban. So look, it's we need role models, we need heroes, we need good stories, but we also need opportunities. And I think that there should be, if there's research done on correlation between education and domestic violence, I feel that it might be the other way around. I don't know, but I'm not saying that there aren't educated guys out there who are,
But you're right, education's a way to almost progress yourself and question and give yourself the mental bandwidth to say, actually, this, I deserve better. I think, Chitra, the reality is you are, I suppose, a beaming light for a lot of people out there, because you are the personification of female empowerment. You know, you've gone out there, and as much as humble that you are, the reality is it hasn't been easy for you, in the sense of going from one country to something vastly different on the other side, studying one subject towards going almost on the other side, becoming an entrepreneur and taking some of the most biggest risks out there. Maybe run us through, why on earth did you go to Portugal? That's a total dislocation in language and culture and everything else you can imagine, at least from London
Yeah.
perspective, you know?
Yeah. So, look, I mean, I think part of it is the fact that both Roman and I felt that this would be a great thing to do. You need, once you're married, I guess you both need to feel that, it's a compromise always, right? You've got to make decisions together. But I think it comes from the spirit of adventure that, our parents instilled in us, and the confidence that we could do anything, that we chose to do. And Portugal at that time, when I just finished my MBA at the London Business School, and that was the time of these internet startups, right? I mean, Google had just come on the scene. Amazon had just started delivering books to your home. So we looked at various business opportunities also in the internet world. But we were amazed by Portugal when we first came to visit the Algarve. It was part of Europe. It was in the most undiscovered country in Western Europe, in our opinion, back then. This was in 2001. And a country which had, kilometers of white sandy beaches. At the same time, had become part of the European Union in 1986. So EU infrastructure funds had been kicking in, and highways were being built and developed. So there was a lot happening on that front, on those fronts, and we felt that it was a great place to invest in real estate and tourism, because the whole of the Western Algarve was going to open up with the building of the highways connecting Faro to the Western Algarve to Lagos, and the north to south as well. The north to south, people used to have to go on a small road.
Did you go to Portugal before this? Did you speak a word of Portuguese or anything else like that before you made the decision of?
Well, I didn't. Yeah, neither Roman nor I spoke any Portuguese, and yeah, I tell you, I mean, it has to come with a certain confidence, or you could call it, I mean, arrogance, I guess, depending on how you look at it, because the truth is we did not speak the language, and but in combination. So Roman is from the continent, from Switzerland, and certain things in the legal system here make sense to him. I'm a chartered accountant and MBA trained in the UK, although the MBA is a very international thing. But we are able to, again, it comes from, working well together and trying to look at a challenge. After the MBA, I mean, you feel invincible. I think that is something as well. You've looked at all these business models, you think, wow, this is a great opportunity. And Portugal had such amazing people already. English was widely spoken. It was a challenge. It was a challenge to say, wow, this is an undiscovered gem in Western Europe. Let's do a project here. So at that time, I mean, the blood, sweat, and tears came later. And you need true grit to get through all that. And here we are again in this pandemic, having to survive yet another huge crisis. But I think it's the glasses you wear. You can either, be. We were very happy with London. I loved London. Living in London. I'd already lived there for 12 years and had become British. But this was an amazing challenge to take on, and we knew we wanted to have kids. And Portugal had this lovely culture that is very family oriented, very Indian.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
Chitra, I think we're missing out a big chunk there that you set up your hotel almost in the middle of nowhere. So even that whole idea of community, having the sense of belonging, I think your neighbors were sheep, where you guys kind of kicked off first,
Yeah,
you know?
so Sagrish. Yes, look, it was really out in the southwesternmost point of Europe, and in the middle of the national park. Um, and we built an anchor project. Yes, there's no doubt. We felt that this would be an amazing location for a five-star resort because it was surrounded by the most amazing beaches. And so the things that some people see as challenge are actually beautiful, on the other side. And we were able to bring this anchor project. I mean, economically, it's had a huge positive impact on the whole region because it's the only five-star resort for miles around. And the knock-on impact of a tourism project, a hotel of that scale, really is lots of suppliers, food suppliers, local.
It creates a virtuous circle, doesn't it?
Exactly, it's fantastic. Yeah, surf schools, local restaurants. So we're very proud of that. There was no doubt it was a very difficult project, uh, you know, to have done from scratch. But nothing in life that's good comes easy, and you live and learn. I mean, we had investors who were there, and then when the tough times came and we had an equity call, things didn't happen on time, etc. So the whole thing was very character building, and the fact that we had to see the period, the last global financial crisis, 2008 to 2014, pretty much. Portugal went into bailout in 2011. So all that, well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess.
And to top it off, you were expecting your first child. You were pregnant.
Oh yeah.
Is that correct? So you were literally a couple of months towards the end when you finished the hotel.
We had our fourth baby was born. So the first child was born just as we arrived in Portugal. And that's why we focused the Martinal brand on the luxury family end of the market, because we realized how difficult it was to have quality family time in a luxury resort when you suddenly had children. And yeah, so we had four kids between the time we arrived in Portugal and the time we opened our first resort. Again, multitasking is part of being female. And if you got to get something done, give it to a busy woman, I say.
Well, what does the future hold for you? Because you've been doing a lot of work both for Portugal as a whole. You're almost a social custodian and an economic custodian to Portugal. I think a lot of people see you as being synonymous out there. So you've been waving the Portuguese flag. You've been getting involved in education, educating students out there, giving them a chance to go to a better system that equips them for the international life.
Yeah, so I spent 3 years. I was invited to join a foreign direct investment task force set up by the Prime Minister's office here in 2017, and I was honored, to be asked, and I joined and worked. That was my pro bono work for the government for 3 years, and it was almost natural, because I believe in Portugal. I believe in the positives that Portugal has to offer. I did a TED talk, a TEDx talk on why Portugal is trending, but involved not just in pitching alongside the Ministry of Economy and the Trade and Industry Board here and the Tourism Board here about how great it is to set up shop here, how great it is to move your shared services center here. Talking about the educated workforce here. We've got a high number of IT engineers here, and therefore it's very attractive to set up IT services center here. But also a lot of good research and development happens in the biotech world, especially as you move further north, Coimbra Porto, artificial intelligence. So I had a great time talking about all these great factors of why one should invest in Portugal. But it's also the society. I mean, I often talk about this, people can invest in different tax havens around the world, but you want somewhere nice to live after you've invested the money. It's not just about the taxes. You want to live in a society where people care about other people and have, welcome you with open arms. And that's
Absolutely.
what I love about Portugal. That's one of the top reasons to live here. It's a safety, security, so many other things. But people welcome you as a foreign investor and as a foreigner here. And so that's
I was going to
definitely.
say, have you been to any countries that you didn't feel welcomed?
Yes, but I haven't done the same thing of investing there. Look, being Indian, I've definitely faced racism in the past, and unfortunately, even where I took on citizenship in Britain, I faced it. I'll be very honest with you. But that's, I can happily say that in Portugal, I've never faced racism in all the nearly 2 decades that I've been here. And there is something about it. There's such a mix of culture here. When I've tried to get to the bottom of it, the Portuguese say, yes, we are already very mixed people. We have Arab in us and Indian in us. That may be true, but there is something more than that that
Yeah.
makes them, open, tolerant, and liberal. And touching on the education project you spoke about earlier that you asked me about, yes, we're investing in an international school in the middle of Lisbon because we realized, when I started doing this work for the government, that the lack of places in the international schools that are currently here leads to families not moving here, expat families or foreign investors, or Portugal has the golden visa program as well, the non-habitual residence program. But these people can't move here if there are no schools for their kids, So we saw that as an interesting project to develop. And as you said, it gives an international system an option for Portuguese kids to study in an international school, which gives them different opportunities. So yeah, we've been working on that since 2017, and we're about to open. We acquired an old defunct university building and we've repurposed it for this international school. So we're quite proud of that. And we're calling it the United Lisbon International School, following on from our belief in the United Nations and such international agencies being even more important for the future.
What inspires you? Because we've known each other for quite a while, and you're one of the most inspirational people that I know because you've got this purpose, you got a focus, but you're also very, very humble. What is that driving force in you?
Well, first of all, thank you, Rajan, for such nice words. What drives me? I think for me, we need to be creating positive change in the world. That should be, everyone's purpose. And that's what a lot of these projects have been about: creating positive change for a region, creating an anchor project that will enable more foreign direct investment, FDI, to happen in Lisbon. Because people say, oh, why are you doing that project? Well, it's obviously business-wise, it's got to be interesting. You need to have human beings need purpose in life. And I love education. I mean, you heard me speak about it earlier. Education is one of the key change enablers in our societies around the world. So it's creating positive change, I think, is one of the things that drives me. And what inspires me, I mean, you said I'm humble. Well, humility is very important, I think, no matter what one has achieved, and persistence. And when I think of all these great leaders, I mean, they were humble. They are humble, or they were humble. Gandhiji, Nelson Mandela. Think about what they had to go through. But yeah, humility is a very, very basic and important thing. So yeah, I guess, you know, these are a couple of things that do inspire and, you know,
Then
inspire.
what scares you for future generations?
Gosh, so many things. Well, look, I mean, we're having this conversation now. If we'd had this conversation 4 months ago, 5 months ago, would have been, um, you know, we would have talked about climate change and, you know,
We would have been,
nationalism.
and we would have been in person, you know.
Yes, that's right. That's
That's the
right.
thing.
So, you know, uh, you know, the rise of populism and nationalism does scare me, you know, for future generations, which is one of the reasons, you know, for us naming the school United Lisbon, because it's only by being united and cooperating that we can solve most of the world's problems. And look at what's happened, you know. Here you have countries spending on defense, you know, and we couldn't defend ourselves against a virus. So, you know, but we'll get through it, you know. Everyone suddenly, I mean, I started reading up about the Spanish flu 5 years ago because it was coming up in you know, journals like The Economist, you know, every year saying one thing the scientists are concerned about is pandemics such as the Spanish flu. And I even remember discussing it with my son before he went on a summer camp, you know, which was geared more towards biotechnology and biomedicine. But you know, medical challenges. We've had such an advancement of medicine since 1918. I'm hopeful that with the number of you know biotech firms, you know, biomedical firms, and global cooperation, we will get the fastest answer to a vaccine or treatment we've ever had potentially. And I hope that um, uh, you know that cooperation continues. And if there's one thing this pandemic has shown us, Rajan, is uh, how we should all be working together much more and not trying to you know forget the blame game. Let's focus on, you know, fixing the problems. And so, despite the fact that I'm worried for future generations, I mean, I remember my parents were worried for their children, and you know, our grandparents were worried for, you know, their children. You know, at least we haven't had a war in Europe here, you know, where we're living. For many years, thanks to the formation of the you know European Union, and obviously there was the Balkan Wars, and that was a huge lesson. We continue to learn, and that's one thing. You know, history should teach us something, and we should keep looking towards the future and be positive that we can solve climate change, that we can solve, you know, global pandemics, and you know, finding treatments for things that you know didn't have so much attention before, as well as work on global institutions like the United Nations, because that's how we can come together easily.
I feel like this is a rallying call for part two of Chitra's global expansion. That we're going to see your seat in the UN, where it would be justly deserved.
Oh well, no, thank you so much. You know, I'm going to be 50 soon, so I think my time is up. It's over to the next generation for sure. And I think this is one thing we've tried to raise kids who are aware of the global problems, and that's the only way that you know these problems can be solved, is making them aware and educating them, you know, on what's going on out there.
Yeah, it's definitely changing times. Well, to wrap up, what will be your three pearls of wisdom that you give out to the audience out there? Because we're growing, we have this incredible movement of people connecting the global diaspora in ways that's never been done. But most people need to know that your life has not been easy. You've actually blood, sweat, and tears is only one part of it. There's a lot of guts for you to have stood up and gone over. And I think again, I get it. It's a testimony to your father and your mother, who I've had the privilege of meeting. And even your father's had an incredible, incredible experience. What's your
Yeah.
what's your top three pearls of wisdom that you want to
Definitely, one is keep working hard. You know, I think this life is about working hard to create positive change. The other is life isn't easy. When talking to my children, no one has a straight path. And if they did for part of their lives, the rest of it might be difficult. So you got to keep getting up and keep moving forward. I think that's another lesson that I have learned. And the third is look at the positive side of life, because that's what's going to keep you going and keep you smiling. Optimism is important for entrepreneurs. You may be having a terrible time, but you've got to look at the positive things you've achieved, whether it's for the day, the week, or the year, and keep looking forward at what is positive about the situation, even the pandemic. I mean, I said to you, especially now, I mean, I could add a whole chapter to my TED talk as to why Portugal is even more attractive to move to now. And that's optimism, I guess. And if you keep believing in it, and envisioning it, you could make it happen.
Yeah, don't forget the vision. I think one thing that always sticks with me is the fact that you're the only hotelier who's is child encompassing, but you got a mini in your in the kitchen area, where people are dining, and it's that type of creativity and that type of fun. I think what spurs it ahead. Chitra, you are such an incredible human being. I'm really glad that you took up the call to action in getting on.
Thank you. No, well, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's an honor to be on this podcast, Rajan, and thank you for everything, all the nice things that you've said about me. I hope to live up to all of that. So, all the best. I wish you and your family all the best in these pandemic times, and let's keep looking forward. We got to make it work.
What a fantastic episode! Really, what a fantastic episode. Chitra's such a great speaker. If you don't know already, do check out her TED Talks on YouTube. I guess just type in the name Chitra Stern. You can see a lot of the stuff that she's been speaking about incredibly passionately. And she really is a United Nations rolled in one. The amount of languages that she now speaks is unbelievable. Remarkable individual. As promised at the beginning of the show, now to connect with us guys at the Global Indian, it can't be any easier if you are on social media. If you're on Instagram, you can connect with us at the Nazrans, which is my personal account, or at the Global Indian series. You are there. On YouTube, great platform of choice for a lot of our listeners now. You can connect with us at the Global Indian series. There you can see the whole repertoire of conversations so far, as well as ways to touch base with us. Now, if you're listening via affiliate platforms, people like chutneymusic.com, again, you'll see a large icons there with email contact forms on that side. And if you're listening to the official platform that carries us, which is podbean.com, really simple. All you have to type in is globalindian.podbean.com. And there, again, you can see the entire episode so far, as well as our contact details. Now, if you like what we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on the platform of choice that you're listening to. Also, if you'd like to share your story, make sure you touch base with us. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to get you involved in the show itself, because ultimately, together, we get to create a living encyclopedia on the human experience of being a person of Indian origin. We are such a tremendously large community, and we need to mean more to each other. And more importantly, we need to make sure we start recording our history, because for those future generations, they too need to know the extraordinary journeys that our ancestors went through to get to where we are now. Until next week, I hope all remains well. Stay safe. Speak to you soon.